Welcome to African Catholic Voices, a podcast service of the Pan-African Catholic Theology and Pastoral Network. My name is Father Stan Chu Ilo. I'm your host today. Here in this forum, we have the African Palaver. We celebrate the art of conversation. We listen to each other. We listen to the groans of creation. We listen to the joys and sorrows of our people, and we celebrate the lives of those Africans who are making changes in small and big ways. We also identify with other men and women outside Africa, cultural civilization peoples who are also in the struggle for life, for abundant life, for human and cosmic flourishing. And in a special way, today, we will listen to the testimony of one of the young African missionaries who has done a great work in small but magnificent ways and attracted the attention of people in Canada, at the Vatican, all over the world. I'm talking about Father Nnaemeka Ali, our own. And I'd like to welcome you to this podcast, Father Nnaemeka. Welcome to African Catholic Voices.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
And who is Nnaemeka Ali? I know that you're a household name among our folks in the Pan-African Catholic Theology and Pastoral Network at the Congress, Pan-African Congress in Nairobi. You were very present, ubiquitous presence all over. So people know you, but just for the sake of our audience, if you can introduce yourself, please.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's an honor to be here and also to speak to my own people about who I am. I'm Father Nnaemeka Ali. I'm a missionary Oblate of Mary Immaculate. I'm from Nigeria, but I'm working in Canada. And I'm working precisely with the First Nation community, the Indigenous community called a community in Quebec called and First Nation in Quebec called Innu Nation. And we are covering. We have is a nation is a First Nation of around 11 communities, but we are covering 7 to 8 of those communities. We're a group of missionaries from Africa, from Canada, from different parts of the world, working with these people. So that's who I am.
Thank you. And we congratulate you for your successful apostolate. We've read about the successful apostolate from Radio Canada, from Radio Vatican, and many other local and international news outlets. And when the Pope was in Canada recently, you were very visible, providing expert information and knowledge about the condition of First Nations, Indigenous people, particularly the Innu. But before we talk about your success stories, how did you end up from Nigeria to this remote community with the Indigenous First Nations of Canada?
Yeah, I was as a missionary Oblate of Mary Immaculate. We work in different parts of the world. In fact, we're actually in 64 countries in the world, and Canada happened to be one of the first places we started working. The Oblates have been in Canada since around 1830 something, around 1838 or 1841. It's been a very long time. And from the beginning, we worked with the First Nation people. So when I was in my formation years, I really wanted to work in Nigeria. I did my formation, part of my formation in Cameroon, in Italy, and I came back to Nigeria. But then I was asked if I wanted to come over here to come and help. And I said yes, without knowing where I was going. And that's how I just arrived in Canada. And in 2 days' time, I was catapulted to one remote place. It's in the northern part of Quebec. And since I stayed there for 7 years and 18 months, and it was a wonderful experience that changed my life as a missionary, as a person.
Thank you. What prepared you for this?
Few things prepared me. One is my upbringing. I grew up in a community where family and culture was very important. So I grew up really knowing that I'm not alone, that I'm a part of a group of people, a group of within my family, within my community. So throughout my formation years, it guided me knowing that whenever I arrive, it should be my family, it should be my people, and I should keep my time for them. So also, did it prepare me really for this particular mission? Not directly, because I didn't know much about the history of First Nation people in Canada. I didn't know many things about them. But then, also, as a missionary, one of those things I always told myself is you need to listen first, because the more you listen, the more you learn. So I wasn't prepared more than any other person should have been prepared, but I was ready to learn as I as things go, as I see things. And within few 1 year or more, I learned few things that gave me opportunity to really join with my community, and we learn together. And that's how I've been doing it, just learning, and I continue learning till today.
Thank you. I'm quite surprised, Nnaemeka, that your community, the Oblates, will send you to such a remote place without preparing you. So you're saying that your congregation has no preparation, no cultural immersion for people before missionaries are sent to such a place. Because if I understood you well, you said you had no specific preparation for this mission.
That's a good question, or a good observation. As a missionary congregation, one thing we are formed in is we are formed in interculturality and international experience. Already from Nigeria, before we start our formation in Cameroon, we come from different cultures, from different tribes, and we start already learning each other. In Cameroon, we're like up to from 8 or more countries. In Rome too, we're so many. So all our formation has always been a formation in interculturality, information in to be ready to go wherever you are sent. But we are not formed for a particular mission. We are formed for the mission of the church. And that mission is defined when you arrive there. Because every formation we receive will help us only to learn how to listen and learn from the culture, because every culture is particular. There's no culture resembles each other. In fact, even within the culture, as time goes on, it changes. So there's always continuous learning. So we are formed to learn from the culture we are sent to, not really formed for a particular culture, but any culture we find ourselves into. That's how the congregation is made.
Yeah, so tell us more about the Oblates. I mean, you're not very visible in some African countries. You are in some. The Oblates seem to have chosen specific countries to serve in Africa. Africa is in need of missionaries and priests. So, is it that the Oblates found you in Nigeria or in Cameroon to come to work in Canada with the indigenous nations because they didn't find a spot for you in Africa? So, they had to ship you off from the African motherland.
No, it's a good observation. Outbreaks are not known mainly in Nigeria, but if you go to Cameroon, we are the founders of the Northern Mission in Cameroon. If you go to Kenya, we are still like 25 years, but we are present there. If you go to Senegal, we are there. In fact, we are in around 16 to 17 countries in Africa. As a matter of fact, Africa has the number of oblates in Africa is more than the oblates in every part of the world, actually. Yeah, but one thing with, particular with the oblates is sometimes, especially in Africa, we leave whenever a mission is done. Like when we start a mission and we find out that the mission, the community or the diocese is ready to take over, we move ahead. So in many cases, we have left. So even in Canada, actually, there are so many. We started so many missions, but we have left almost everything, keeping few ones. So oblates stay only where they are needed. Wherever we're not needed, we go away. We have a long history of great men. We also have a long history of men who really didn't make us proud. So in every country, oblates could mean one thing or the other, but at the end, the oblates are men of mission, men of situation, and men who are ready for any type of mission in the whole world.
Thank you very much, Nnaemeka. We thank the good Lord for your commitment, your missionary spirit, and that of your congregation, the Oblates. Brothers and sisters, you are listening to African Catholic Voices, and today we are delighted to speak with Nnaemeka Ali, who has been a missionary to the First Nations, especially the Innu of Canada, and completed nearly 8 years of service. And he's sharing with us the lessons from the mission. And Nnaemeka, we take a pause with our very special music that you have chosen. And what's the title of the music that we will play?
The title is Jemelev, I Rise. I Rise.
Thank you. Let us listen to Jemelev, I Rise.
Son corps et ses pieds battant le sol. J'appelle la tribu, le monde entier. Car il faut le rêver. Beau, grand, fort et libre. C'est les contours de mon âme. Du talent, le son de ma cadavre, et mon ardeur, l'heure de ta fleur. Quand le jour se lève, quand le jour se lève, quand le jour se lève, je danse avec lui, je danse avec lui, je danse avec lui. Quand le jour se lève, quand le jour se lève, quand le jour se lève, je me lève aussi, je me lève aussi, je me lève aussi. Quand le jour se lève, quand le jour se lève, quand le jour se lève, je lui dis merci, je lui dis merci, je lui dis merci. Le matoucha, vous allez contourner les replis de mon âme. Avec du talent, le sol de ma cadavre, j'en ai mon ardeur, l'heure de ta flamme. Quand le jour se lève, quand le jour se lève, quand le jour se lève, je danse avec lui, je danse avec lui, je danse avec lui. Quand le jour se lève, quand le jour se lève, quand le jour se lève, je me lève aussi, je me lève aussi, je me lève aussi. Quand le jour se lève,
I hope you enjoy the music. We all arise. We arise with Jesus. We arise every day to begin a new day. We wake up in the morning. So, why did you choose this song?
I chose this song because, when I was coming to Canada, one thing people think about Canada is just a country for white men, a country where you have a monoculture. But I arrived in Canada and found myself with the Innu people, and I discovered a culture totally different from everything I've known about Canada.
Hmm.
These are people who have known all sorts of atrocity. You can name it. Who have known all sorts of. The civilization in among the First Nations is one of the worst civilizations you can talk about. But you find out
What
that,
do you mean the worst civilization? I got to stop you there because it doesn't sound nice to my ear. You say worst civilization. You mean in terms of the people they're not nice people, or that they are a civilization that has seen a lot of tragedies?
oh, that's good question. I don't mean their civilization, but the colonization I would have want. I mean the type of colonization, because the idea was the colonizers came as civilizers. But this
Mm-hmm.
type of colonization that was imposed on the First Nation communities in Canada and the USA, as a matter of fact, is one of the worst you can imagine. Because
Mm-hmm.
sometimes, when we're in Africa, we think about our colonization or stuff, and we think maybe we had the worst aspect of it. In Australia, you have also the same thing. But we remember that at a point, the colonizers at least left, even if they are still somewhere present, but they left the continent and left us to manage our country in the way we are doing it today. But here, the colonizers become settlers. So the people who welcome strangers at a point were put in reserves. And the word says reservation. We know about animal reservation. And those are the
Mm-hmm.
words used for communities built for these nations. And unfortunately, the anthropology of the time and also the way the world saw civilization at that point in time made it in a way that even missionaries were part of this very program that denied them access to their culture, access to their language, access to their spirituality. So this become important because this is a kind of renaissance, kind of renewal, becoming again. So this myth about when the sun rises or when the day rises, I rise too. I sing to my ancestors. I sing to my people. I rise with them and I hear the sound of the drum. I run with drums. I run in the forest of my people. When I hear that, I hear what is inside me, how I feel as a black person, as someone who have been in a colonized country and who have been considered at the beginning as not being part of this very church or not even having. So it could go up to that level, and who feel today that I'm loved by God. So I feel like it's like being free again. So this song is a song of freedom, a song of a soul that feels I'm free. I can sing, I can run, I can connect to my ancestors, I can connect to my land, I can connect to my people.
That's a powerful song, Nnaemeka. We rise. I think for many indigenous peoples here in North America is a continuous struggle for life amidst the destructive forces of neoliberal capitalism. And, as someone who had lived in Africa, it was only when I was doing um, radio and television commentary for Canadian television in 2013 when Mandela died that it dawned on me what you just said. During the conversation and research we were doing to celebrate Mandela, I realized that the systems, structures, and institutions of apartheid in South Africa grew from the evisceration and destructive structures and systems of these settlements and reservation built for indigenous people of North America. So the Nationalist Party in South Africa learned how to oppress Black people and how to put them in these Black townships from the way the cultural genocide and destruction and suppression of the natives, as they call them, the indigenous peoples. So there is a similarity. We all are battling against this white supremacy and the destructive effects of it, or even the residues of Christendom that kind of in an unholy alliance, somehow not deliberate, if you like, but a convergence of projects, found ourselves, missionaries found themselves, this God, gold, and glory, or Christianity, commerce, and civilization, all these kind of converge to produce what you've described. And meaning your work, you must have had some high points and low points as a missionary to the First Nations. Can you share with us those high points and low points?
I've had high points, a lot of them. One of the high points is that I came to a community that accepted me, not just as a stranger, but who really made me one of them. I have a family. And when I say family, I mean a family that really adopted me. Like one of them is a family where today I can pick my phone and say, I need something somewhere. Any of them, anybody from that family who is free is going to do it. Not because I'm a priest, but because I'm a brother to them. And whenever they need me at any moment, be it day or night, they can call me. They know that I will always be there. So not just that family, there are other instances of such type of welcoming. So the Innu people really welcomed me, accepted me, independent of the history, what the history is. The low point is you know much about the relationship between the church and and the society in Canada, actually. But I know there are those who don't know about it. But an example, one day I was invited during, there was a national program. There was kind of committee investigating on disappeared and assassinated Indigenous women. And I was invited as to come and accompany those who are going through, because there are so many Catholics there. So I had to pray every morning. But that was the hardest moment I lived in my mission. I had to pray in the morning, kind of to begin the day with almost 15 or 20 different television stations who are there. But just after that, those who were abused, we're talking about one of my own brothers who died like many years back. We're talking about being abused by one of my own brothers. So you as a priest coming in front to talk and to pray, and a few minutes after talking about the abuse of one of your brother or one of the priests, it's not the best moment for you to come back the next day. But I didn't stop. It didn't stop me from going forward. I went ahead. They knew that history. They were able to say, "You, we know you. You live with us. We have been with you. We invited you because we trust you." So there are cases of moments where the history comes back and begin to haunt us. But every moment, people could be annoyed. Sometimes they get annoyed and they're not happy. But you need to know that it's not you. It's about the history. And we feel indignant even about that. We feel ashamed, even though that's not the best thing to do. But at a point, you need to tell yourself that the history wasn't faithful. And the mission you are continuing, there were so many great missionaries. We have to recognize that. There were so many of them who did great works. But there are also those who didn't do great works. And we are the heirs of those who did well and those who didn't do well. So I could name as many of them, sweet, great moments, but I could also name many moments that weren't really the best.
Thank you. And you have carried the lamentations of the First Nations. You really, in a typically incarnational manner, you embodied this lamentation, and in a number of your conversations with international news outlets and national news outlets, you've given voice to the cries of these First Nations. So what are those lamentations that you've carried with you even now?
I've had opportunity in many occasions, to talk about what to do, because at a point there are some journalists who don't understand why a missionary should still be with the First Nation people today, with indigenous people. There are also some who don't see why indigenous people should be attending church because of the history. But then, being in the community, I come to understand that this is not just about indigenous people. This is about humanity. When one human being is suffering, we are suffering. When one person, nobody's free as long as there are those who are still in bondage. So I carried, any moment I had to talk about my experience, I needed to tell people that what these people, what indigenous people are talking about is not fake. They're not talking about their trauma is not made up. Their trauma is real because I live with it. I've seen people, and often I discover that their fight has always been my own fight. So we are together in it. I've carried along. I've tried to raise idea on the importance of being engaged, not just only the church members, but even the society has to be engaged in it. Tomorrow again, I might have an opportunity to speak to one of the journalists from the community with Radio Canada, Indigenous Emission. So, where are we with the reconciliation? What can we do? Who should be involved in this? We should all be involved. That's all I have said. Nobody is innocent as long as this situation is concerned, because if we didn't stop it, then we are involved, and if we didn't see it, then we didn't hear the cry of our brothers. So there's nothing like I didn't know about it. Why didn't you know about it? There's nothing like I couldn't do anything about it. Then why couldn't you do anything about it? If you were the one suffering, would you have remained quiet? If your brother was suffering, would you have remained quiet? So when an individual is suffering in the society, every member of the society should feel involved. We should all rise. We should all stand with anybody who is suffering, be it here, be it in Africa, be it in Asia, be it wherever you can imagine on earth. Whenever we see oppression and we remain silent, then we are parts in that oppression. So that's about my
Thank you very much, Nnaemeka. The Pope was in Canada, and he made an apology to the First Nations, but people embraced that. It touched many people. It moved many people. For some, they say too little, too late, because as you discover graves of First Nation children who were buried in these mass graves, people didn't know how they died. As we see the high rate of suicide among the First Nations, the unacceptable level of poverty, the dilapidated structures, lack of access to healthcare, lack of access to quality education, and still they cry. They have not risen, as your song and the song you chose. Many are still downtrodden. Many are battered, wounded, and angry. So the question is reconciliation possible? And what kind of justice do we need first before we talk of reconciliation, or can both run in pari passu?
Yes, the question is legitimate, and even ages that many First Nation people were talking about, children who didn't come back from the residential schools, nobody heard about it. It took the discovery of these unmarked graves. They were really unmarked graves, and some of them were marked, but they didn't take appropriate care to identify them so that they disappeared. Because in Canada, you have graves that dates like up to 100, 200 years. But why weren't those ones identifiable? Because they were not properly taken care of. So there are so many history about that. One could go one way or the other. But at the end, I think what is important, and the question is about the reconciliation. I'm at a point now in my comprehension that the idea of reconciliation is kind of juxtaposed and placed in a wrong manner. When you talk about reconciliation, we talk about going back to what has been there before. But the real question is, has there been any real relationship between the indigenous people and the non-indigenous in Canada? That's the question. People, historians will give idea, yeah, we were together, but then people were never. There weren't a moment in the relationship where we had a people in Canada where the First Nation and the where the indigenous and non-indigenous lived together and stayed together. So if we are reconciling, it means we are going back to that point. Are we going to back to that point where there was no relationship? No. So reconciliation becomes a problematic. I think what we should be doing today is not to reconcile, because we can't agree on reconciliation, but we can now say, what can we do today? Because this land is for everybody. The First Nation people are not asking non-indigenous to leave Canada. All they're asking is to be listened to. So we should now listen to them. We should try as much as possible to enter into contact with them, to listen to their story and work with them. That's all they're saying. Come to the circle. They are inviting us to the circle. We have a story. We have a history. We have spirituality. We have a culture. Listen to us. Are we doing that? When we start that, then there will be what we can call it reconciliation. But that might not be. That will be creation of a nation.
Thank you. You speak like Pope Francis, who is inviting us for this culture of encounter. Let us come under the Palava tree. But Pope Francis says it's only when we're in the room and then listening to each other that something can happen. A transformation can take place. And we thank you for being a messenger of peace, reconciliation, and love for the indigenous peoples, particularly the Innu of Quebec, and for your courage and prophetic witness in this magnificent way. As we come to the end of our conversation, we always say, what's your hope? What's your hope for the Innu people and the First Nations of Canada? And what's your hope for your continent, Africa, as you are working for reconciliation, for restoration, for justice, for peace, progress, prosperity, and for a listening ear to be given to the First Nations? What's your hope too for Africa? And then you can conclude with a prayer for us.
My hope, I always say that one thing we should never lose is hope. If once you lose hope, you can't continue to live. I'm a very hopeful person, and I'm a very hopeful person because I've seen a hopeful nation. I've been with a hopeful nation. People who have decided to reinvent their life, to take their destiny in their hands and walk again and walk with their ancestors. So my hope is that, just like this song we listened to, that many people will wake up, will rise. Let's rise up together. Let's move. Let's walk in our territories. Let's walk with the ancestors. Let's regain, reconnect with our spirituality, with our culture, with our people, with our origin, with our identity. That's my prayer, not just for the indigenous people, but also for the Africans. But not just for the Africans, but for the whole humanity. We are one. In fact, the name Innu means human, because they were called mountaineers. They say we are not mountaineers, we are humans. The Inuit also were called Eskimos because of the type of land house they built. They say we are not Eskimos, we are Inuit, Inuktitut. All those things, names are, we are human. Look at us, see us. We are humans like every other person. So I think what we need in this world is to discover our humanity. Once we are able to reconnect with our humanity, because God have endowed this humanity with one particular thing that makes him sacred, that's his soul. If we are able to be in contact with our soul, maybe we will stop all this aggressive capitalism. We will stop all this aggressive civilization. We stop everything that really diminishes our existence. We'll begin to look at what raises us as a people. So my prayer today is that we become human again. I call upon, and I'm going to conclude with a prayer. Thank you, Father. Thank you for giving us the possibility to live again. Give us the grace to reconnect with our identity. Give us the grace to allow our humanity to emerge. Give us the grace to rise together. Let's rise as humanity, as sons and daughters of God. Let us reconnect with our spirituality, our ancestral powers, our ancestral cultures, our ancestral spirituality. Let us all together move so that humanity will be what God has always wanted for him. Who has this through our elder brother, Jesus Christ our Lord.
Amen. Thank you very much, Father Nnaemeka Ali, missionary to the Innu First Nation of North America. Thank you, brothers and sisters, for being a part of this important and very inspirational episode. Until next time, when we meet again, we ask you to be strong in your faith, to be courageous in your hope, to be fervent and faithful in loving. Let's take care of ourselves. Let's take care of this beautiful planet. Let's take care of everyone. And like Father Nnaemeka has prayed, let's take care of our humanity. That's the African spirit of Ubuntu. We all belong. We all are connected. And we rise and walk together, hand in hand, to that future which God alone knows. God bless you.